All right, so good morning. How is everybody doing today? Friday, the Panthers finally get back on the ice and get to play. Now, for those of you who are wondering, what's this all about? What's this podcast all about? Well, today is the day that I'm going to go over and review my 20 game prediction. I did a prediction beginning of the season for the Panthers, every 20 games in terms of how I thought they would do. And I figured since I was going to do that today, instead of just inserting it into the podcast and then cutting it and making it its own separate video, I figured why not just make the podcast public today? We're up to 72 paid subscribers. If you're not aware, every day, Monday through Friday, I do about a 1 hour podcast. Sometimes it's closer to 50 minutes. Sometimes it goes over an hour. I cover mostly Panthers, but I also cover the Dolphins when it's football season and tell stories. I end every podcast with story time with Jaws. I've released a couple of those. Memberships are available. You can be a YouTube member or you can be a Patreon supporter. Links are in the descriptions to all my videos. Memberships start at $3 a month. And I mean, we're up to 72. We're up to 72 people. I cannot thank you enough. So I figured let's just make this one public so everybody gets a chance to see what the podcast is all about. Now, a couple of things we're going to go over. One question I have here real quick before we start. Anthony Duclair, as we all know, Anthony Duclair is going to be back on the ice tonight, and it coincides with the Panthers are having their Black History Month night. I think I said that correctly. Panthers released a couple of pictures, a sneak peek, if you will, of what the warm-up jersey is going to look like tonight. Looks pretty sweet. It's black. But the question I have, and this is a legit question, I hope nobody takes this the wrong way. In the sneak peek, it shows that there's like red roses on the jersey. I'm assuming there's some significance to that. I don't know. I would like to know. So if somebody could fill me in the comments, I'd appreciate that. Now, the 20 game review. I'm going to bring up a graphic here that shows you what I predicted and what has happened so far. You guys know me. I can find a way to make it sound like I'm right, or at least we could hope that I'm right. So let's get into it a little bit. I didn't nail it on the head. We'll put it that way, but I'll find a silver lining here. Okay, so here you see the Florida Panthers predicted season. First 20 games, I had us at 11-7-2, and not so bad, 10-8-2. So I was only off by 2 points, basically one extra win. And so I thought, okay, I thought it was on target. Remember, I predicted at the end of the season we were going to win the cup. I predicted we'd be getting better each 20 games and that we were going to win the cup. The second 20 games is clearly where I was sadly mistaken. I said we'd go 13-5-2 for 28 points. And those second 20 games you can see are clearly the reason why we are currently not in a playoff position. We went 8-10-2 for only 18 points. So not only did we start off the season basically 500, right? 10-8-2 is basically 500, but we got worse the second 20 games. I know we had some injury issues, and Bob was definitely not playing well at all. I think those are two things we certainly couldn't have accounted for. Nobody would have gone into this season concerned about Bobrovsky's play. But the first half of the season, especially the first third of the season, he was bad. He was terrible. So that to me is where the season went wrong. Now, if you look at what I said for the third 20 games, I didn't put us having too much more of an improvement. I said 14-5-1 for 29 points, and I wasn't that far off. We went 11-7-2 for 24 points, which is what I had predicted for the first 20 games. Now, a couple of things here. For the final 22 games, I had us going 16-4-2. If we do that, which is pretty much the pace that we all kind of agree we need to be around, if we go 16-4-2 the rest of the way, that'd get us to 98 points. Now, if you've been watching this podcast, you know that I've been trying to scream us to get 100. We need 100. Last year, 100 points got in. Last year, 98 points would not have gotten in. Now, a few years ago, I had to finish the season by wrapping 96 points and still not getting in. I'm not interested in having to sing the song of 98 points and still not getting in. But it could happen. I mean, we could legit go 16-4-2 in these last games. That's only 98 points. And when we go and we look at the standings and who's playing who, it's such a mixed bag of what we're hoping for. Unfortunately, though, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, the one thing that I've gotten kind of correct, remember, I'm trying to stretch this because if I'm right, we win the cup. So you guys want me to be right. I clearly haven't nailed it here, but I did predict so far out of the first, if you broke it down into 2020, I did predict that 40 through 60, that those games we would have been playing at our best pace of the season. And that did happen. Okay. So even though we haven't gotten better every 20 games, I did predict that games 40 through 60, that would be our best 20 game run of the season so far. And it has been. So what is that? In the 22 games, what is that? That is about a 5-game improvement, right? Now, I know it's not even, right? We've got the extra 2 games. It's not 20, it's 22. But 16-4-2 gets you to 98 points, which pretty much, tells you the importance of some of these games. That is winning 4 and losing 1, and winning 4 and losing 1. We got to do that 4 times, and you can throw in a couple of overtime losses. But it's going to depend on who those victories are against. It's not just a guarantee of, okay, go 16-4 and 98 points and we're sure to get in. The way it's looking right now, there's so many teams bunched up, and we'll talk about some of the results from last night and everything and what's going to happen tonight and over the course of the next few days. Everybody's playing each other. There's so many teams that are bunched up that somebody's getting points every night. And that's part of the issue. So before I close this up, we're at 64 points right now. Where did I have us? Let's see, 60, 72. I had us at 81 points. Is that right? After this, let's see. It's added again. That's 60. That's 72 and 9. So at this point in the season, I had predicted 81 points. Okay. I predicted we were going to get 115. So obviously I'm way off there. But had I been right, let's go over to the standings now. Had I been right and we had 81 points at this point, we would be in second place in the division, very solidly in second place. But the Bruins, we would still be nowhere near the Bruins, who are going to peak again. I mean, 44, 8-5. They've won 5 in a row again. And unless they completely just blow it, they are likely to have a goal differential of over 100. That's where the Panthers would have been last year had they not given up those 10 goals to Montreal at the end of the season. The Panthers would have ended up with a goal differential of over 100. The difference, of course, with the Bruins is they're not, they're scoring, but they're not scoring at an obscene pace like the Panthers were last year, although they do have the most goals in the Eastern Conference. But it's the goals allowed, 123. There's nobody even close. The Maple Leafs have allowed 156, Hurricanes 148. there's nobody basically within 25 goals allowed. So that's about a half a goal a game better than even the next best team. Now, last night we got a little bit of help, not so much help. The teams have changed. The teams that we're concerned about have flipped. And there's still one team that is not a whole lot of people are talking about, but I'm going to show you how we could have something really good happen for the Panthers, but at the same time, it would not be so good. So before we get into that, right now, as of this morning, the Red Wings are in that 8th seed because of games in hand. That's 3 games in hand. All right. Otherwise, I mean, they're almost dead. I mean, they're dead even in points. Goal differential is only a 1 difference. But you see in the last 10 games, they're 7-3. We're 6-4. They've actually picked up 2 points on us in the last 10 games. Sabres came back, ended up beating Tampa. Well, Tampa came back, and then they went to overtime. So the Sabres got 2 points. So they're 2 points away from us with 4 games in hand. And now, if you look over here back in the Metro, Capitals, with the trade that they just made, kind of signals a little bit of the white flag, right? Like, I think the Capitals' mindset probably is maybe they could sneak into the 8th seed, but they probably feel, and accurately so, that they're not really a threat to win a cup this year. You know, they couldn't get past the Panthers last year. Any number of the teams that they would possibly be playing if they made the 7 or 8 seed, whether it be, Hurricanes, Devils, Bruins, Maple Leafs, Lightning, depending on how things lay out, the Capitals aren't beating any of those teams in the playoffs. You know what I mean? So, and then you look at the Penguins, and they've lost again, and they've just been reeling, right? They've lost 4 in a row, 3-6-1 in the last 10. So for quite some time, for the majority of the time, it has been the Penguins and Capitals that the Panthers have been chasing. Now, they're not out of the woods yet, right? I mean, Capitals are 2 points behind us, same amount of games played. Penguins are a point behind us, but they got 3 games in hand. So certainly, if either one of those 2 teams rights the ship and gets on a tear, they could be the team that people are still chasing. Now, the Islanders have played their 61st game. They got 67 points. They keep winning. Some time ago, I thought, before the 4 in a row that the Penguins lost, I thought that the Penguins had the 7 seed pretty well in decent shape because of the number of games in hand that they had on other teams. But you see it this time of year, it's so close. A 3 or 4 game streak one way or another is going to bring you up or take you out. Now, I want to go over one thing, because if you notice, like most people, I kind of left the Senators out, because let's face it, when you think the Ottawa Senators, you're not exactly thinking playoff spot here, okay? But they do play a big factor in here, and I don't know if they can sneak in, but here's the thing. You look at the Panthers now, they're neck and neck with the Red Wings, right? Red Wings, they got the Lightning tomorrow, and then they have 2 in a row against the Senators. So you look at that and you say, hey, come on, Ottawa, let's go, right? We need Ottawa to win those games, okay? We need Ottawa to win those games in regulation. They're both in Ottawa. It's back-to-back. It is such a strange thing, but that's what's going on. However, problem with Ottawa winning both of those games is that would put them 2 points behind the Panthers, depending on what the Panthers do, right? They'd either be 2 or 4 points behind the Panthers by that point, because the Panthers don't play again until next Tuesday. And they'd still have a couple games in hand. You see what I'm saying? Everybody's playing everybody. And then what we really need to hope doesn't happen, the worst thing that could happen, is the Senators and Red Wings split those games and they both go to overtime. So there's 3 points being divided up each night, right? So in the 2 games, the Red Wings get 3 points, and in the 2 games, the Senators get 3 points. And then it becomes, you can't ignore the Ottawa Senators. And I know that most people might think they probably don't have the gas to come up and do it, but games-wise, points in hand, I always like to look at things from the perspective of if the other team won their games in hand. Right now, if the Senators won the games in hand that they had over the Panthers, they would be, 2 points ahead of the Panthers. And that's the Senators we're talking about here. So there's just so much there. And then if you look over here with the Penguins and Capitals, I want to look at the Islanders because I noticed some oddities with their schedule a little bit. Or was it the Islanders? I know one of these other teams, or it might have been the Sabres. I think it was maybe the Sabres. I want to look at the Sabres schedule. I thought they had some back-to-backs. No, it was more about the quality of the opponent that the Sabres have here. All right. Got the Panthers tonight after they played the Lightning last night. Okay. Then they're going to get a day off. This game right here, Capitals Sabres. Sabres win that game. You could pretty much start putting nails in the coffin to the Capitals. There's only so many games that any of these teams can lose, and everybody's kind of playing each other. So that's another game there where, as we sit, if you look at things, I'd kind of prefer the Capitals to maybe pull one out and win that game because I have more faith that the Sabres are going to win more games towards the end of the season than the Capitals do. Sabres then got the Jackets, and then they go on a tear against some high-quality teams. Bruins, Lightning, Oilers, Islanders, Stars, Rangers, Maple Leafs, Capitals again. So they don't play a non-likely or possible playoff team until they play the Flyers March 17th. So that is a gauntlet now, and it's not all at home. It's not on the road. They do travel a lot for that too, right? I mean, home, road, home, road, home, road, road. So there's a little bit of a streak there, but it's not so bad. So you look at that and you think, well, this is all timing up, and I've talked about this a lot. This is all timing up with what the Panthers have in this homestand. So let's look at where we are right now with the Panthers in terms of their schedule. Sabres tonight. There has never been a more must-win game combined with there should be zero excuses. The Sabres have played 2 games while the Panthers have rested. They played last night. They had to play Tampa, who's a really hard opponent, obviously, and the game went to overtime while the Panthers have been rested. There's negative excuse here, okay? There should be no excuse genuinely that this game should not be close. And I'm not saying that because I don't think the Sabres were a quality opponent. But again, we've been resting while they played 2 games, including last night. This is their 3rd game in 4 days. This should not be close. If the Panthers are serious about making a run, I want to see 2-0, maybe even 3-0 by the end of this first period tonight. We should be coming out and burying this team, and it should just be brutally obvious. It should be so bad that we feel bad for the Sabres. It should be like, hey, look, sorry guys, we've been on the bad end of that plenty of times. Okay, we've been on the bad end of back-to-backs and everything like that plenty of times. We get it. We just had it. What was it? I guess it was the Nashville game, right? We had a couple of times where we were getting, we just had no legs. It has to look like that tonight, okay? It has to look like that tonight. Then Panthers get another couple of days off. Then we got the Lightning, okay? Then we have a day off. Then we have the Predators. We're back at home. This Lightning game is on the road. Now, every game is a must 2 points, right? But we're not going to go 22-0, okay? This game right here against the Lightning, just get this sucker to overtime and then see what happens. We do have 2 overtime losses. If we need to go 16-4-2, I'm not going to cry if this is one of those 2 overtime losses. You obviously you want to win every game, but let's face it, you're not going to go 22-0. So, all right, get this game to overtime and then see what happens. Then we're back home and we have time off. We have the Predators, then we got the Penguins. Okay, this game here against the Penguins, absolutely must 2 points in regulation. Cannot screw around with these games. Okay, again, 16-4-2. All right, now we get a couple of days off, and then we get the Golden Knights. Now, if we're going to lose a game in regulation during this homestand, that's the game. We don't have a great, fantastic. I don't know. There's something about the Knights. We just haven't played spectacularly against them. Obviously, we really haven't played well at Vegas. I'm not sure what our record here in Florida against them is, but they just tend to have our number. Okay, and again, you ain't gonna win every single game. Okay, you want to win it, but if we're gonna lose a game, that's the game, because after that, we've got a couple more days off. And then I don't want to say it gets easy, okay? But Blackhawks, Jets, Canadians. Now, obviously, Blackhawks and Canadians, just no questions asked. There's a must. The Jets are a good team. Let's not get confused here. And that's the second of the back-to-back. And this is where we're going to have a question mark. Is Spencer Knight going to have enough games to get ready? I don't think so. Honestly, I think if Bob is playing well, you play Bob in these games. And why is that? Because you had a game on the 4th, you had the 5th and 6th off. You had a game on the 7th, you had the 8th and 9th off. He can play a back-to-back here. And then look, we don't play again to the 16th. To me, there's absolutely no reason, if Bob is playing as well as he has, you just roll with Bob through that. You leave Spencer in the AHL. There's no need to put Alex Lyon in against either one of those teams. If you're going to put Lyon in at all, you do it against the Blackhawks, okay? If you're going to do it, you do it against the Blackhawks. But again, with all this rest in between games, I can't imagine why you would need to do that, okay? So the homestand wraps up with the Devils on the 18th. Not a team we're chasing, but you look at all of those games. Out of all of those games, okay, let's see. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Out of those 9 games, you got to go 7-1-1. You got to go 7-1-1. You can lose to the Knights. You can lose in overtime to the Lightning. You got to win the rest of them in regulation. You do that, and then you combine that with the schedule that the Sabres have during that time, and maybe we can create a little bit of space there. Now, as soon as the homestand is over, boom, we're right to Detroit. And this is where it's going to get real hairy, okay? Long homestand, first road game. You know Detroit's not, they're playing well enough. They're not going to have been out of it by now. That's a game, I don't want to say it scares me, but when I say we need to go 16-4-2, but it depends on which games we win and which games we lose, this is what I'm talking about. If we could go to Philadelphia, if we beat the Wings and we go to Philadelphia and lose, I'm not even going to cry about it. I'm not even going to cry about it because you denied the Red Wings those 2 points. Okay. It's not optimal. I'm not suggesting that what we should do, but if we end the season and we only lose 4 more games, this is not one of those 4. That could literally make the difference. This is what I mean. We could go 16-4-2, but if one of those 4 regulation losses is this game to the Wings or the games to the Sabres, we will not get into the playoffs. The head-to-heads are absolutely 100% mandatory. So you got the Red Wings, Flyers, and then you come back home for the Leafs. Okay, now this is back-to-back here. Now that's another possible goalie situation. Now we haven't had as much time off. If you've let Bob play all of these games, you put Bob out there against the Red Wings, and now the next night against the Flyers, my opinion, that's the first time you look at things and say, okay, are we going to throw Alex Lyon out there? Is Spencer ready? To me, that's the first time that we genuinely, barring injury, should probably throw our backup goaltender out there. So we'll see how Spencer does at the AHL. And then we're closing in on done here, people, okay? We got the Red Wings, Flyers. We come back home for the Leafs on the 23rd, okay? We got the Rangers on the 25th. Not teams we're worried about in the playoffs, but then here we go. Panthers, Senators. Now, you wouldn't have thought that this mattered, but it might. It might matter in terms of if these two games that the Senators have against the Red Wings. If the Senators pull a rabbit out of their ass and win those games, they're going to be in the race pretty much just like the Panthers are. They may not be as close, but remember, they've got all their games in hand too. So again, this is another one of these games where, yeah, we could lose 4 games. We could lose a couple in overtime, but not this game. Can't be this game, okay? If you're going to lose another regulation overtime game, lose to the Leafs, lose to the Rangers. We can survive that. This is not one we can survive. So we're at the Senators on the 27th. We do get the day off, and then we've got the Leafs on the road again. But here we go. 29th, 30th. We've got issues again, and then we're going to have, April 1st there. So we're only going to have one day off in between. So that's 3 and 4. That's 3 and 4. Now, where we're lucky is, Canadians, Jackets, not exactly stellar competition, although the Canadians have been better of late. They're not as far behind as you would think. So somewhere in here, again, we're going to have to use our backup goaltender. My suggestion here again is you play Bob against the Leafs, and then this game against the Canadians, depending on Spencer again. To me personally, I would just leave Alex Lyon up and let him be our backup, and just let Spencer keep getting games and make that decision about whether to bring him back up or not towards the playoffs. If we're going to get in, make that decision a little bit later. So then we've got the Blue Jackets, and that ends that road trip. That's the last long road trip. It's 3 games. So it's not overly long. Excuse me, it's 4 games. It's 4 games in that 1 week. And I think that's what Maurice was talking about when he said we'll have to wait till we get to one of these games where we have 4 games in a week to decide, about the backup goaltender. Then we come back home. And we only had the one more road game. We come back home, Sabres, Panthers, April 4th. Senators, Panthers, April 6th. Look at the standings and tell me those 2 games are not going to be must-wins. You can't. You can't. Either team, either the Panthers or Sabres or Panthers and Senators, or all 3 teams, are going to need a regulation win to stay out of being eliminated, and probably both of those games. Most likely both of those games could be, if you lose in regulation, you're eliminated. That is just, get your tickets now. If you want to see playoff hockey, on the off chance that the Panthers don't get into the playoffs, those 2 games are going to be rocking and rolling. And then all we have left after that is we have the 1 road game to the Capitals. That could still mean something. All right. Capitals still have this guy named Alex Ovechkin. I know that they're tail off and everything, but how many games in a row are they going to lose before they get it turned around? They're not that far out of things right now, only a couple points out. If they get it turned around, the Capitals could still be right there. No questions asked. That could be another game where either team, if they don't win in regulation, could be eliminated. I say get your tickets, but it's in Washington. It's not as easy as a trip for me as it might sound. So we'll have to see about that. And then we finished the season off April 10th against the Leafs at home, and then April 13th against the Hurricanes at home. Don't know what that situation is going to be. The Leafs could still be needing to win games to secure home ice in their series, likely against Tampa. The Hurricanes, let me look at that real quick. Let's just go to the standings since we're done with the schedule. The Hurricanes, they could still be needing to win that game, although they're in pretty decent shape, right? The Devils are 3 points out, but the Hurricanes have 2 games in hand. So most likely, the Canes are 9-1, man, in their last 10. Most likely, that's probably going to be a game that the Panthers need, but the Hurricanes will most likely not need that game tremendously. So that's the schedule. That's what we've got going on the rest of the way. Now, real quick in terms of tonight, for those of you who haven't, I'll catch you all up real quick. Duclair is back tonight. Danisenko's down in the AHL. Spencer Knight's down in the AHL. We lost Chris Tierney on waivers to Montreal. Interesting kind of pickup there for them. They're not exactly a team that's thinking they're going to make the playoffs. Tierney is just a guy that you could probably kick the tires on at any point. Maybe my thought would be they're looking towards next season. I don't know if they have any injuries, but maybe they're just looking to see if there's a way, if there's a space for him, if he's somebody that they want to get signed, or if they're just short bodies somewhere and they needed a guy. No huge loss our way. If we do make the playoffs, you like to have veteran guys who will come in and play decently. And Tierney had played decently up until the last game. And I kind of saw him dogging on the ice. I called him out a couple of times during the live stream. And as further proof that my entire house is bugged by the Florida Panthers organization, as soon as I said that, he didn't see the ice the rest of the game. And then coach took him out, scratched him, and then we waived him. So just another one of those odd coincidences. In terms of tonight, like I said, we're going to get Duke back. Don't ask anybody what the lines are going to be because you've got Barkov, Bennett, and Eric Staal as game time decisions. Now, I suspect, I said this yesterday, I suspect you're going to see Barkov and I suspect you're going to see Bennett. Eric Staal, I don't know. We only have so many guys, so it doesn't matter really how all 3 of those guys feel from the perspective of at least one of you, or maybe 2, you've got to play because we just don't have the guys to fill in. We don't have enough guys for all of those guys to miss a game. My guess is Barkov is going to be okay. And Bennett's not going to want to miss this game. So we'll see what happens with Staal. And then so who knows where Duke is going to slot in. The main thing I want to see from Duke tonight is the power play. The power play has just been brutal. It has been bad. And that's an insult to bad, okay? Because Bad was a pretty damn good album by Michael Jackson. I ain't talking that kind of bad, all right? It's been this way now, and boy, don't we all feel stupid for firing Bruno now? Jeff Automatics had it right. Those of you who didn't want to fire him, you weren't wrong from the perspective of we shouldn't have fired him because the power play turned into crap, because it's been 2 seasons now of the same thing where we either go on this wild and crazy run where we're the number 1 power play in the league, or we're the worst power play in the league and we look terrible. There's no middle ground, and we end up, you end up and you say, well, they're 15th, 16th ranked. Yeah, because half the season they're the best and half of the season they're the worst. We need some more consistency. And I want Duke in that right circle, okay? I want Barkov the hell out of there because, to me, he's the one that slows things down because the defense doesn't have to account for him taking any one-timers. They're going to pass it to Barkov. He's going to do that little circle around thing, or he's just going to look to try to pass it to somebody else. So the defense, when Barkov gets the puck, they can just cheat to everybody else, and it's almost like we're not on a power play. You can't do that with Duke, because when we're passing the puck to Duke, he's winding up for that one-timer, okay? And you never know where it's coming, and it's coming 100 miles an hour at your head. So you just better duck and get the hell out of the way and hope the goalie sees it, all right? Completely different dynamic. That's not just going to help if Duke is scoring, but they're not going to be able, the defense is not going to be able to cheat, all right? You're going to see Ekblad, whoever's in that left circle, whether it be Ekblad or Reinhardt in the bumper, you're going to see guys have a little bit more open space because Duke is not Barkov, okay? Barkov is good for what he is. I don't know why they insist on keeping him on the power play. In my opinion, between Barkov and Ekblad, those are the two reasons why the power play does not work the way it should. Barkov doesn't shoot enough, and Ekblad's hurt. I talked with Stu about this a couple weeks ago, and if you notice, Ekblad has not been really lining up to take those one-timers, right? And you figure if it's his groin, he can't quite, get those hips swiveled and get that lower body moving in the right direction as hard as he wants to, because he's trying to protect that groin when we all know he's had something going on the entire season. So I'd like to see some rearrangement of the personnel. I want to see Duclair out there. Montour. Give me Montour, Duclair, Reinhardt, Kachuk, and who else? Verhaeghe, right? Let's get some shooters out there on this power play, okay? Enough with the dilly-dally and passing the puck around. We don't have any time left in the season to figure it out. Get the guys out there that are going to shoot the puck, and that's the end of that. And now it's time for story time with Jaws. So yesterday, now I've told all sorts of stories. I've told the Shark Stack story. I've told dog stories, brother from another mother with Gene stories. Yesterday, I told a story about how I came to learn about selling on eBay. And so I figured I'd follow that up today with just a couple of the best finds and some of the things that I have found in terms of selling on eBay. Now, I told the story yesterday about the first big find with all the antique Buddhism books. That story I told, but there's a couple more. Now, one of them is kind of if you're a believer in law of attraction and speaking things into existence, this is a story for you. So there was a period of time where kind of was struggling. That's why I had gone to massage school, because everybody had found eBay and Storage Wars was out, and you used to be able to go and get a whole storage unit for $50, $100. And now because Storage Wars was out, now the same unit that cost you $100 last year, people were just blindly buying for $500, $700, $2,000 sometimes. So you opened up the storage unit and it was just boxes and you didn't know what was in them. You were just buying blindly. Now, so the business got really, really, really tight. And people at the yard sales, all they knew was eBay now, right? So instead of buying something for $1 that I'm going to turn into $20, now those people, well, I looked it up on eBay, it's worth 20, so you can have it for 10. Okay. Anybody that's sold on eBay or has any kind of business knows double your money ain't exactly double your money. By the time you invest the 10 and you take the time and the fees and everything like that, there's no profit in something that you're buying for $10 that you're going to make for 20, unless there's no middleman involved. If you're selling it at your own yard sale, that's one thing. So the market got really, really tight. So I went to massage school. Things were going okay, but it was like as I was making more money in massage, I was making money less on eBay. And at that point, I did not have my van, did not have a lot of capital. And for about 6 months, the latter half of a year, for about 6 months, I just kept walking around. I just need $1,000 in a van. I just give me $1,000 and a van, because at that point, me having $1,000 to spend was a lot of money. Okay. And I had a car, right? So I wasn't able to like load up when I went to an auction or anything like that. I just kept saying it. Give me $1,000 a van. Give me $1,000 in a van. So tax return time came, and this was back in the day when I got a lot of money in my tax returns because 3 kids. run a business, right? And always get $5, $6, sometimes $7, $8,000 back in taxes. So I took some of that and I bought it was about a $400 van. And I still remember going to pick it up. I had to pick it up in Orlando, and it was, it probably had 180, 200,000 miles on it, right? No air conditioning. I knew what I was buying, but it ran. And I remember picking it up. I had to drive to Orlando. Some brother Gene took me out there, and I knocked on the guy's door, and a guy about kind of that looked like me now, right? A little bit, late 40s, early 50s. He answered the door, and he just was like, he's all sad. He's all sad. So what's wrong, man? He says, I'm 48 years old, and I got divorced, and now I knocked up my 28-year-old girlfriend. So I gotta sell this van so I can buy a minivan. And he was just so distraught. And I felt so bad for the dude that I didn't talk him down. What am I going to do? Talk him from 400 to 300? You know what I mean? It was bad. So I never forget that part. So I get this van. So now I got my van. And now I'm walking around when I'm yard selling. I got $1,000 cash. I left it in the envelope. I went to the ATM. I took the money out, put it in the envelope that you get from the ATM, and I put it in my pocket. Every time I went shopping, I'm putting it out. And little by little, it's dwindling down. And now it's 700, 600. And this one particular day, I'm down to $400. And whatever was coming for me with when I needed $1,000 in a van, it hadn't shown up yet until one day, one Saturday, I'm out there not really having a whole lot of luck. And I pull up to this yard sale over, if you live in Melbourne, it was west of Wickham Road on Lake Washington, and in one of the developments over that way. And there was a guy who what he had been doing for years was he had been collecting NASA documents, photos and everything like that, because the space, Kennedy Space Center is right there. So what he would do is he would buy everything out from an estate, all the collectibles. And all he was interested in was in the high money stuff, the autograph stuff. And he was sending that to an auction house in Las Vegas and making a bunch of money. But he had, I don't know, 25, 30 big, heavy cases filled with everything else. Books, documents, photos, transcripts, and not garbage. Like I'm talking like Apollo stuff, Mercury stuff. He had all this stuff that had he wanted to sell it for $10 here, $20 here, 20, 30, 20, he could have, but he wasn't interested in that. He was interested in the high ticket items, some of which were selling for $5,000, $10,000, $12,000. So I show up, and he's having this yard sale, and he's got all the boxes out there. And it's him and his wife and a couple of friends. And what they were doing, what they had finally decided to do was they're going to sell everything they had, and they were moving to Vegas, and he was going to help run this auction house with this other gentleman because he had so much knowledge at this point that, the guy had asked him, hey, why don't you just come run this with me? And then you don't have to pick and pack, you know what I mean? Pick and peck, whatever you want to call it. So he was moving. So I show up, and if he would have sold it to me at the prices he had listed, if I bought everything from him at the prices that he had listed in terms of how many boxes and what he was asking for each book and everything like that, it'd have been about 10 grand. That's what it would have cost at the yard sale. Now his girlfriend's there, and I come up to him, and I didn't even know why I asked this, because it was stupid, because I seen his prices. And I said, well, how much for everything? And that was like my big thing to do. Like if somebody had thousands of books, I'd be like, how much for everything? And usually people with books or heavy items would be like, you're going to take them all? Load up, right? But I said, how much for everything? He says, well, how much do you want? And I told him, I said, I sell on eBay. It's what I do for a living. I said, I got my tax return. I bought the van. I pulled out my envelope. By this point, I'd been yard sailing with it for a few weeks. It's crumpled, it's dirt. I pulled it out and I said, I got $400 left. I got $400 left. And he looked at it and he looked at me and he looked at my van and he said, take it all. And I about fell on the floor. My eyes got big as saucers. And his girlfriend lost her shit. She lost her mind on him, tearing him up. What are you doing? I mean, just lost it. And for him, he was basically like, look, I want to carry this all the way back in. Nobody else is coming buying all of this stuff. Nobody's going to do this. He's going to have to carry it back in the house. What are you going to do? Ship it to Vegas? You know how much that's going to cost? Get a storage unit? This wasn't the quality of items that he wanted to sell. He just wanted it gone. To him, it was just all leftover stuff. So his attitude was very much like mine. He's like, I want it gone. This is going to help him. This helps me. Everybody wins. She was just berate. She had to go inside the house. She was just berating him to no end. So I loaded up the boxes in the van and I gave him the $400 and I thanked him profusely. And for about 8 to 10 years after that, I was pretty much one of, if not the biggest NASA dealers on eBay, certainly for the next 4 or 5 years. And in fact, this was in it's 23 now. This would have been 2010, 2011. Yeah, maybe 2010. 2010 or 2011. This past summer, Kyle and I just cracked open the last box. That's how much there was. We just literally cracked open the last box. I'd taken it all over with me, moved it. Not like a box that I'd opened, gone through, and no, like cracked open from the original sale. We cracked, and there was good stuff in there. Good stuff. Now the prices, we don't get the same prices that we used to, right? Things have changed. The economy's different. Books that I sell now for $8 to $10 with free shipping, I would regularly get $30, $40, $50 for a long time. I mean, we lived off of it. There's no two ways about it. So the point is all I needed was $1,000 in a van. And I just kept saying it and saying it and saying it. And I got my van, and the last of that $1,000, we lived on that. There was at least a 5-year period where every week I was selling $1,000 worth a week just of NASA items. Yeah. And then, it's tailed off from there. It's not the same, you know what I mean? The market changes and everything. But for a solid 5 years, it was, if I had, a $600 or $700 a week with the NASA stuff, it was slow. And a lot of it was international people too. That's actually a big part of the reason why the business has changed so much, because international shipping has just skyrocketed. Somebody used to be able to buy like 8, 10 pictures from me, and I could ship it to them for $8, $9. Now that's more like $30, right? And so when you're buying, when you're buying items that are only valued $10 and $20, paying $23 to ship a $10 picture doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know what I mean? So that's changed a lot of things. So that is one of the biggest things that I have found. Now, there's a couple other smaller things. Kyle was actually with me this one particular time. This was the first auction I took him to. It was, Cliff Schuler's Auctioneers in Titusville. And there were, I don't know, 3 or 4 nice sized jewelry cases of, I think they were pendants. There were pendants, but there was silver. And rarely was I the high bidder on that kind of stuff, because usually the jewelry guys would come and they were going to pay damn near market value for something and hold on to it. But I guess I was just there at the right moment at the right time. And there had to be 100 or 200 pins in each case. And there's, I don't know, 6, 8 cases on this one table. And I don't know if other people got confused with the bidding. I don't know if people thought that they were buying an item, but before they started bidding, he did kind of allude to the fact that we're doing this a little bit differently, because normally we do it by item, but we're running out of time. So we're just going to sell this by the case, right? So I won at like 30, 40 bucks. And I think the other people didn't, they were chit-chatting, and they've been going there for so long that they just assumed it was by the piece, but they were doing it by the case this one day. And I was paying attention, and I remember when I won it, 30, 40 bucks, whatever it was. The guy says, "How many do you want?" And I said, "I want all the cases." And this guy that was standing next to me lost his mind. I don't want to get the video demonetized. But the first thing he said was, "There goes all the effing money." And he takes his hat off and he throws his hat, and he had his backpack on and he threw it on the ground and he stomped around. He lost his mind because he probably thought I was betting on $30 for one piece. I was going to pick 2 pieces, and then leave the rest. And then eventually, usually what happens is they go by the piece. You buy a piece here, a piece there. And then when it gets down to where they're only paying like $5 or $10 a piece, then they'll sell the whole case. But they didn't do that. Nobody else was paying attention. So I got a hell of a bargain that day. Oh, we made so much money off of that. It was all silver. It was all silver, like pendants, So let's see if I can pull up one more. Let's see if I got one more. Oh, this is a funny story. A Polly Pocket. For those of you wondering what the hell Polly Pocket is, it's just like a little action figure toy for girls. No big deal. You know what I mean? And this was actually one of the first really big, ridiculous turnarounds that I had. There was this Polly Pocket toy that I got at a thrift store, probably Goodwill, whatever, Salvation Army, and it was a quarter. Okay. And it was no bigger than the phone. It was on the card. It had this little, like a little 2-inch figurine or whatever like that. And the day the auction was ending, I was sick. I was sick as a dog, to the point where they actually called the ambulance on me, and then they figured I could. They called the ambulance on me because they didn't think I could walk. And when the ambulance came, they said, "Well, can you get up?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So they said, "Okay." Well, they checked my vitals. Everything was good. So they took me to the hospital. I was really sick, but I remember it because as the auction was ending, it was like while my ex was calling for the ambulance, because they didn't know what the hell to do with me. I bought it for a quarter, and it ended at $256. And I just remember laying there, just like feeling like I'm going to die and I'm going to throw up. And they're coming into the room and be like, "The Polly Pocket's over $256," which again, this was before 9/11. That's how long ago this was. This was before 9/11. And I just remember telling myself to remember that feeling, in the sense that this should be a moment where I'm like celebrating and full of glee and just like, "Oh my God," because $250 for us back then, that was big money, right? Okay. And instead I just was like, "It's good." And I just fall back into the bed. And it definitely ruined that moment for me. But then in hindsight, I get a good laugh about it. And that was not like a normal thing. Like, we did the research, and they would normally sell for, $10, $12. Now, still a quarter into $10. Okay. Right. But I guess this was the rare Polly Pocket. Don't ask me. I don't know. Okay. $256 $256. I could go on for 6 hours with stories like that, but that's going to do it for today's podcast. Now, like I said, I appreciate all of the support. There are 72 people right now. We have 50 paid YouTube members and 22 paid Patreon supporters. The links are in the description. I do this every day, Monday through Friday, unless there's a holiday or a Panther game in the middle of the day that screws up my schedule, screws up everybody's schedule. But I appreciate everybody that's joined. I've been putting out the clips from the videos. Seems like that's been working because I keep getting dinged on new members joining. So I really appreciate that. And a lot of times people are asking me, did you talk about this, especially with the Panthers? Did you talk about this? Did you mention that? Did you talk about this? Yeah, it's in the podcast. That's how I'm kind of doing it now. I want to reward the people that are showing me all that support. And I don't mean that as a negative. If you can't join, you can't afford it, don't want to do it, no difference. I love y'all for watching. But it's just over the course of this year with the super chats and the people joining the memberships, the amount of support I'm getting from people is just so extraordinary that I wanted to do something as a reward. And I figured this would be smart to do. And this is my thanks. And then every once in a while, I take a clip from this, I put it on the regular channel so that there's other content other than the reviews and the recaps and all of that. So that's what we're doing here. All right. It's noon. We've got hockey tonight. Biggest game of the year so far. Absolutely mandatory 2 points. Appreciate all the support. I'll see you all again real soon.